G'day, you're watching Miss Hobbs Teaches Biology, and in this episode, you are going to be learning all about levels of organisation. Welcome back to another episode of Miss Hobbs Teaches. My name's Miss Hobbs. I am a Victorian science, STEM, business and agriculture teacher, and all of my videos are Victorian curriculum aligned. Okay, let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about levels of cellular organisation and how we get from that really little cell all the way up to a much larger system. So we have been talking about systems and how systems work together. So this lesson here is the next progression on this, and what do we actually classify, okay, and how do these systems work together, and how do we know that they work together at all of these sorts of levels? If you haven't caught up, make sure that you have watched the previous biology playlist and that you are up to date with all the videos before coming to this one, because otherwise it might not make a whole lot of sense. And this video correlates with the worksheet that you should all have access to on the level of organisation. Okay, so that's where this video links in. Okay, so we know that the very smallest unit is the cell. Okay, now cells, many cells combine together to form what we call a tissue. Now tissues, they link up, okay, to form organs. Organs together form a system, which systems together form a multicellular organism, okay? That's how it works. We're going to break it down, okay? It is a tree, and we are going to go through and work out how our tree progresses and how we get from that cell right up to a whole system, or say a whole human being. From just one cell to a whole human being. That's what we're going to cover, and that's what we're going to find out. Okay, so we know that our smallest level is a cell, and that our two types of cells are prokaryotic or eukaryotic cells. And the difference between those is that our eukaryotic cells have those membrane-bound organelles, okay? So we've got our single cells, and in humans, we see eukaryotic cells and we see eukaryotic animal cells. So we've got those two smaller types of cells, okay? So in us, we see eukaryotic animal cells, okay? Now these eukaryotic animal cells, when these get together, okay, and we see multiple eukaryotic animal cells combine, okay, they form what we call tissue. Now tissue can be into four types, okay? We can have muscle tissue, we can have nervous tissue, we can have connective tissue or epithelial tissue. Now, muscle tissue, as you might remember, can be one of a couple types, okay? So muscle tissue is obviously allowing for movement, and it can either be skeletal, it can be smooth, or it can be cardiac. And remembering that skeletal is connected to your bones, okay? That smooth is around your organs, and that cardiac is at the heart. The next type of tissue that you could also have that cells, okay, cells making up the tissue, is nervous tissue, okay? Now we know that our nervous system allows for control and communication, and it's a bit like all that electrical, okay? But when we're just talking about the little nerves, okay, because cells make up tissue and nerves are a type of tissue, okay? They could be maybe nerves in our brain or in our spinal cord, okay? That's our nice examples there. We also then have what we call connective tissue. Now, connective tissue is going to provide us structure and support. And this is going to be like cartilage, ligaments. You know how your nose, how it's got lots of cartilage and you can wiggle it like that, okay? How you've got ligaments which allow for the bending. You've got the tendons, okay? That's what we call connective tissue, okay? So connective tissue, those ligaments that are making up your nose, right? Or what we call connective tissue, that's made up of lots and lots of little eukaryotic animal cells, which are in my nose making up, okay, that's why I can wiggle it, that connective tissue, okay? The very last type of tissue we have is epithelial tissue. Now, epithelial tissue allows for cover and protection. And you might remember when we talked about the digestive system, okay, that our epithelial tissue, okay, lines our intestine with those microvilli, okay, and they look a little bit like, okay, right? And they allow for absorption and gas exchange, right? That's that epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is also an example of our skin, okay? It's just under our skin, our epithelial layer. So we know, okay, we've got lots of little cells and they go together to make these tissues, which are a little bit bigger. So those similar cells are grouped together to form tissue types. Now, our tissue types can be muscle, it can be nerve, it can be epithelial, or it can be connective. Now, these tissue types are grouped together in a specific way to form an even more specific function. Now, when multiple types of tissue join together to form a specific function, okay, we get what we call an organ, okay? So we've moved from a cell, lots of the same cell, form one type of tissue. Now, we've got a few different types of tissue, those 4 types of tissue, and 2 or more are going to combine together and we're forming an organ. Now, a nice example of this is our heart, okay? So our heart has that cardiac muscle tissue. It also has nerve tissue, okay, to allow it to contract, and it has connective tissue, okay, which make up the valves allowing the blood to flow through. So the heart is made up of cardiac muscle tissue, okay? That's forming the muscle, it's the organ itself, the cardiac muscle tissue, right? So multiple cells have formed the cardiac muscle tissue, which are now making up our heart. It also has that nervous tissue, okay, allowing it to contract, and it's got that connective tissue, which is making up the valves. So those 3 types of tissue, the connective, cardiac muscle, and nerve tissue, they work together to form the organ, one organ, the heart. Okay, so we've gone cell, tissue, organ. Now, when we group lots of organs or multiple organs together, these form systems, okay? Now, these systems, we've talked about these systems. You've got your digestive system, that has combined multiple organs to form a system. We've talked about the nervous system, okay? That combines multiple organs to form a system. And we've done in depth the circulatory system. And your circulatory system uses organs, okay, to form that big system. Another couple types of systems we've also got are our respiratory system, which allow us to breathe, and our muscular system, okay? So all of our muscles connected up. So that's the thing, okay? We start off with lots of cells which are the same. These same cells group together to form tissues, and they can be 4 types of tissues, okay? Then these 4 types of tissues, when 2 or more of them go together, we form an organ. And then when we have multiple organs, so 2 or more organs together in a group, we call it a system. And the highest level, okay, the biggest level of organization is called an organism. So when all of our organ systems are grouped together, okay, so when we have our circulatory system, our respiratory system, our skeletal system, our circulatory system, when all of these systems group together, we get ourselves as an organism, okay? So that's how our level of organization progresses. It progresses from just one single cell, okay, one single eukaryotic animal cell, right up to us as an organism, okay? That's how it progresses. So let's recap that. Cells, which are the same, group together to form a tissue, okay? The tissue that it forms, okay, can be one of 4 types. It can be muscle, nerve, epithelial, or connective, okay? Then when 2 or more tissues get together, they make up an organ. Then when organs group together that form a function, okay, this forms an organ system. When all of our organ systems in our body are combined, they make up us as the organism. Now, we've talked about in our system that things can go from really small to really big. Now, we can actually measure these. Now, we know that a red blood cell is 0.008 millimeters, okay? Because we know that. Now, we do this thing, okay, because it'd be really inconvenient for me to say that a red blood cell, okay, is 0.008 millimeters, right? That would be really inconvenient. It'd be really inconvenient for me to say that a muscle cell, okay, is 0.5 millimeters. It'd be really inconvenient for me to do those things. So what we do is we convert these into a standardized form. Now, when we convert these into a standardized form, what we're trying to do is get rid of that decimal place. So if we know a red blood cell is 0.008 millimeters, what we can also call that is that it is 8.0 times 10 to the minus 3. Because you see, we have 0.008, okay? So if we move that decimal place 1, 2, 3 spaces, okay, because we want our 8 to be at the start, okay, then we get 8.0 times 10 to the minus 3, okay? And 3, because we moved it 1, 2, 3 spaces, yeah? We can do another example of this. If we know our muscle cell is 0.5 millimeters, okay, then we only need to move our decimal place 1, okay, because 0.5. So we want to move that decimal place to make it not decimal. So then it would be 5.0, and we moved it 1 times 10 to the minus 1. Yeah, that's how, okay, because we need to measure this stuff, right? Because it's important because we're scientists and we like to collect data and numbers. That's how we move, okay? We know our levels of organization. We know where these fit. We can also measure this stuff, and we want to make sure it's really easy to stay. So instead of me saying that a red blood cell, okay, a cell down at the very end is 0.0008 millimeters, I can say that it is 8 times 10 to the minus 3, okay? Because we moved that decimal place 3 spaces. Just like I can say with the muscle cell, okay? And the muscle, or the muscle tissue, I should use my terminology, okay? So it's moved from a cell now to a tissue, and that a muscle tissue is 0.5 millimeters, okay? And move that decimal place 1, and now it's 5, okay, times 10 to the minus 1, yeah? So that's how we convert from standard form. So that was just a brief little tutorial on converting to standard form, because we've talked about our levels of organization. That's the main thing I want you to get away from this video, is levels of organization, understanding those. But also, it's not too difficult, okay, to convert from a pure form, okay, to a standard form, okay? And that's how we go about doing that conversion, is we go how many decimal places do we need to move our point, okay, to make it so our whole number, right, so that 8 or that 1, okay, is at the front. And however many places we need to move it is however many we need to put our 10 to the minus, okay? And we do minus because we're going backwards. If we were going forward, we'd put plus, okay? But we're not going forward, we're going backwards. So that's how that works. So this video, you should be able to know that it goes from a cell, okay, to a tissue, to a organ, to a organ system, right through to us, an organism, and you can measure all of these types of things. But when you're measuring something really small, it's really inconvenient, okay, to say it's 0.008 millimeters, okay? So instead, we move our decimal place to make it a whole number. So we say it's 8 times 10 to however many places we moved our decimal place. Okay, thanks for watching this episode of Miss Hobbs Teaches. I hope that helped you to understand and learn about our levels of organization, and then also at the end, how to measure those small numbers and levels of organizations and how to move those decimal places along. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching this episode of Miss Hobbs Teaches.